This is Brain Software, episode 117, from the Hypnotic World Epicenter, Toronto, Canada. If you're interested in hypnosis, NLP, and personal development, you're in the right place. Stay tuned as we begin our discussion on Toronto, Canada strategies.
Hey, dude. What's happening, Scro? Just killed 6 people with an axe, man. Just slit the throat of a man your age. Was in the 17th dimension, though. Doesn't count against me, Scro.
Thanks for that, Dave. No need to say anything more.
Cool it, Scro. I gotta earn my $25 and announce you. So, here he is. The Elon Musk of hypnosis. The 2IC of the world's most glanative podcast. The mannish boy himself, Chris Thompson, Scro.
Thanks once again, dear friends. Sit down and relax. Let your arms relax too, because this isn't a grain elevator.
We are not wheat farmers!
That's for sure, Cockaloo. But I spoke with a wheat farmer the other day, and he was farming. But seriously, folks, whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know? These are days of victory!
Luchi!
So join me in summoning to the center of the hypnogram a man who owns a fragment of Henry VIII's warship.
That's true.
The sorcerer of somnambulism.
Wow.
The honey badger of hypnosis.
Yeah.
Mike Mandel.
Bavarch! Oh, man. I got to yell Bavarch.
Bavarch,
I just want to say what that is real fast.
People need to check the show notes for the spelling, unless you want to give it to
Well,
them.
it's Bravo Alpha, the new word, Victor Alpha, Romeo Tango, Sierra, Charlie, happy.
Okay, there you go. Happy.
It sounds vaguely foreign.
So it's 2 words. B-A.
Bavarch.
Varch.
It means nothing. I made it up like glanative and dursative.
You made it up last night.
I know, it's a great word because you can use it to greet people. I came into jiu-jitsu class and just screamed, Bavarch! And everybody looked shocked and freaked out.
You can use it if you're
pissed
if
off.
you hurt yourself, you bang your shin.
Bavarch.
Yeah.
You can use it as a curse against someone. Bavarch. You can say it as goodbye. Bavarch.
Yes.
It's just, I want you to use it.
It's wonderful.
It's great. I want to yell it at people, though, for no reason.
Bavarch.
They've got no clue how to proceed. Anyway,
All
that's
right.
just me indulging my own insanity. Bavarch. Let's continue.
All right, so we're gonna do a quick series of our usual
1 minute promo.
Recap of what's coming up, and then this is a mini series on powerful communication. Yeah. This is episode 1 of the mini series. We love doing these. We just wrapped up the principles of hypnosis, and now we're doing the principles
Losing
of
interest.
Mini series of communication. Okay, so let's talk real quick. We've got Wizard School coming up in April.
Yeah.
All of these, by the way, are live events you can check out at MikeMandelHypnosis.com/events. I made some changes to the page so it looks even cooler now, too.
How nice.
Anyway, Wizard School is a weekend-long training. Mike's going to be teaching some awesome advanced strategies in hypnosis. If you have hypnosis training of any kind, any school, doesn't have to be our training, this is suitable for you. If you're an absolute beginner, it's probably not suitable, and you're better off attending our online Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy, which you can find on our website as well. But if you've done some hypnosis training, you want to come to Toronto and study for a weekend with us, we're going to be learning some wicked awesome tools. Man. That's Wizard School in April. Then in May, on the 11th and 12th of May, we have Anthony, I'm making sure I say that very clearly, Anthony and Freddie Jacquin coming in from the UK, and they're teaching a power weekend on hypnosis, and it's going to be a great class. The two of them are just rock stars in the hypnosis world.
And we were trying to figure, who do we bring? Do we bring Anthony or Freddie? We'd leave it up to them, and damn it, we got both of them, which is perfect.
Well, I said,
Father and son
why
team.
would we only bring one?
Yeah,
why don't we
man.
bring them both? They're
Right.
awesome. So we're bringing them in May 11th and 12th, and that class is, since our last podcast, I started mentioning it, more and more people are signing up. So that's really cool.
That's wonderfully vague.
And of course, our May hypnosis training is sold out, which runs right after the Jacquins are finished. So the Monday morning, the 13th of May through the 17th of May, we've got our 5-day architecture of hypnosis. Right now, it is waiting list only. Get on the waiting list if you're interested. Again, it's all at the events page, MikeMandelHypnosis.com/events. We expect to announce the date of our June class soon. Unfortunately, we're still waiting. Just for those of you wondering, when are you going to announce the June dates? I would love to. The university has convocation ceremonies in June, and they get priority for the room. So if they need it, they take it, which means they're not going to rent it to external parties like us until they get their convocation dates nailed down. And they're a little slow this year, so that's why we are waiting. November, though, is open for registration. It's November 18th through 22nd.
And we have some booked already.
Yes, if you sign up for the November class, and then we announce the June dates, and you want to switch, that's fine. All you have to do is let me know. It's not a problem at all. So if you want to lock in your spot for June, the best way to do that is sign up for November. Plan on taking a November class.
Then you'll have priority to fill in
You will be permitted to move. Okay, that's
Brilliant.
it for
Nicely done.
That's it for our little commercial of what we're up to. What is the think tank word of the day, Mike?
This was interesting. I prepped this yesterday.
And let's remind people, what is think tank? Those are new to a podcast.
Savo Bukacek. It's a device that gives you random words that you can use for problem solving, but we've been using them from time to time in the podcast so that we can just get a completely random word and then apply it. Remember, the brain is a self-patterning system, and it will find ways of grafting this into whatever's going on in your life. So
we randomly pick a word, and then we discuss it, and then you can
in the context of what we're doing. The word is insincere.
Insincere.
Whoa. What do you make of that, buddy?
To me, insincere hints of congruence. So congruence being when your message is aligned with how you feel on the inside, or when your behavior,
your body language, everything.
Yeah, when all these things are in alignment. You know, you and I, we get in the zone before we record a podcast, so that we're really into it. We're not like, oh, you're gonna have a great podcast. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty.
We're standing up and yelling Bavarch.
Yeah. So if you're sincere, I think you're congruent with what you feel is what you say, and how you act. It's all lining up. If you're insincere, there is a built-in incongruence. Although people can be pretty congruent about their lives,
hang on here. This is very interesting, Chris, because you brought something to mind that I hadn't thought of in this context. I totally agree with you about congruence with sincerity. But we have a detector as human beings. When people are too earnest, overly sincere, it drives us freaking nuts. I appeared on a TV show a number of years ago with a young woman, and she drove my wife crazy because when our appearance together, this woman was just way too sincere, way too earnest, and my wife found it off-putting.
Kind of like, what is in it for her?
I don't know.
Why does she care so much?
Too much sincerity seems why does she care so much, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, insincere. Now, how do we apply that to this podcast?
Oh, good question. You mean this particular episode or overall?
I'd like you to start being sincere, Chris, so we can discuss this.
I don't have an automatic answer for that.
Well, no.
Do you?
No, I don't. It would be insincere for me to pretend I did.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so how about this?
Let's just say, here's our lesson. Sincerity is congruence.
Yeah. I think there's a congruent element, but then again, if somebody's being insincere, they can be congruent. People can be very convincingly congruent, even though they're insincere. They pretend to really care, but they don't.
Yeah.
So,
I think we all know people like that.
There you
I
go.
just eliminate them from my lives routinely. My lives, all 9 of them. But okay. Well, I think that's as far as that.
All right. So think about what it means to you. Email us if you're interested in sharing. That's fine.
If it's not that interesting.
Yeah. If you sincerely care to share, we'd love to read your email on what it means to you.
And speaking of email, just before we go into communication strategies, those of you, I'd like to hear from the first people who shout Bavarch at someone.
Oh, yeah.
And see what kind of response you get. It's very startling.
A quick reminder, too, to email us. Use info, I-N-F-O, at MikeMandelHypnosis.com.
We both get it.
Yeah, that is an email box that basically gets delivered to both Mike and to I individually.
And to I.
And to I, and to me, and to me,
yeah, and to me.
And to me. So we both get the emails. One of us might reply to you. Both of us might reply to you. None of us might reply to you. We do read all our own emails.
We read them all and largely discount.
All right, now we are mini series on communication strategies. We got pretty excited when we decided we were going to do this after our mini series on hypnosis, because communication strategies are just important in every aspect of your life.
For sure.
Whether you're a professional therapist, whether you're an executive, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in a relationship with somebody, whether you're teaching a class, whether you're a student in a class and you need to ask better questions, or whatever it is that you're doing in life, communication is such a huge part of what you do whenever you're interacting with somebody else or just interacting with yourself.
Right. So we have interpersonal between individuals and groups, and we have intrapersonal, which is communicating with your own brain more efficiently.
So we'll touch on both of these, but I think we're probably going to spend more time on the interpersonal aspects of it. So we've got here's how we're doing this. We've got a long bullet list of things that we want to cover. And we don't actually know how long this mini-series will go. We don't even know how many of the points we're going to cover in this first episode in the mini-series. So we're just going to go through as many as we can. When we run out of time, we will end it and we'll continue on and on and on.
Yes, we shall.
And this might be 2-3 episodes. Maybe it'll go 4 or 5. I don't
300.
know.
Who
We'll
knows?
see. All right, so let's start. What's the very first point here, Mike?
Well, right away, we got to calibrate. So we're going to observe and notice shifts in other people and in their ego states. I worked with a woman a number of years ago, Chris, and it's actually someone you know. And her biggest failing in interpersonal communication was she did not calibrate the other people.
Okay.
She'd ask a question and turn away when they were answering, and she'd talk turned away from the person, forgetting that her voice was directional. And I had to give her a lot of coaching in this regard and put her back on track. And she didn't realize, like, the number of times that she was missing social cues. And we have seen that a number of times with jiu-jitsu class. And we talked about some stellar examples at the Winchester Arms years ago. But yeah, missing social cues and missing shifts in the other person's communication to you is a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, I want to just break this down a little bit more. So observe, the bullet you wrote down here is observe and notice shifts in ego states.
Right.
Now, from a fundamental standpoint, you just need to be able to observe what kind of state people are in the moment. So if somebody's very excited, you're going to communicate with them different. Let's say they're excited about a trip they're going on, or they're excited about
That's when you don't want to go monotone and bitched.
So you're going to probably communicate differently when you notice somebody's excited versus if you notice that they're, say, anxious or worried about something, right?
Right.
And then more importantly, if you see a change, you have to respond to that in some way, right?
Yeah.
I detect that you're getting kind of bored with this, Mark.
No, not in the slightest. I never get bored with my own ideas.
I'm
Chris.
kidding.
I have
All right,
myself as company,
So,
always.
what's the big piece of advice
The big piece is back to Derek Balmer. You can't see what you can't see, which is a tautology.
You can't see what you're not.
You can't see what you're not looking for. So when you engage with another person, number one is calibrate. Be looking at them, be listening, and interact with a human. Not just turned away, distracted by your frickin' iPhone or something. You have to be present
The
for them.
ABC rule, and I don't mean the rule that some salespeople are taught. Always be closing. This is always be calibrating. Congruent. Always be calibrating.
Always be calibrating.
Always be calibrating. Know what you are dealing with.
I'm going to take a side trip on this, Chris. We had friends years ago. We haven't seen them.
You don't have any
in a
friends
number of
anymore?
years. Not these particular ones. They moved away, and they divorced and moved away. But the woman in the couple, I would calibrate. She was extremely auditory, like I am, and I would calibrate that certain words would just be abrasive to her and would set her off. And even if you said them in like annoying voices, she'd go, "Shut up." Like, it would drive her crazy. And one of the weirdest things was she hated the word intercourse. Now realize you can talk about social intercourse is purely conversation. That's all it means.
That's all it means.
And so I would just play on this and say, it's been really nice having intercourse this evening, the whole group. And she'd go,
which is grammatically correct.
Just conversation. That's all it is. And I go, what? But because I had calibrated that this word grated on her, I was able to throw back this hilarious comment.
Yeah.
So calibration can work both ways. If you are determined to annoy someone, good calibration will help you in this regard.
How would you describe a building in conversation with her, I wonder?
How do you describe what?
A building.
Okay, I know you're working towards the word erection here. I'm not stupid, Chris. I have a profound vocabulary.
I know. I'm waiting to see if you'll say it.
I
that's
needed to
just
yell
way
that
too
just to
funny,
get out of my system. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're going to notice shifts in state. Now, what about using the word don't when people are under stress. This is
Okay.
a huge one.
All right, so speaking of ego states, when somebody's in a stressed out ego state,
Yeah.
usually that means that, according to the hypnotic model, their critical faculty is offline. So they are... What?
I'm still back at you saying, totally innocently, how would you describe a building? It's like I knew right away where you were going.
I went to Rome, and I was fascinated by all of the ancient erections.
Oh, man. Okay, but no, before I proceed, I've got to milk this. There was a preacher I heard years ago, and he was talking about the Israelites in the wilderness with the tabernacle, and he said, and what would you see, beloved, as you came over the hill if you were part of the Israelite community? The first thing you would see was a huge erection of tents. And I realized he paused after. You cannot pause after saying huge erection. You shouldn't be saying that from a pulpit anyway.
You definitely.
Okay, that's
all right.
Back to communication.
All
that was
right.
miscommunication on his part.
All right. So when people are under stress,
Yeah.
they are prone to accept any suggestion, and they are not as likely to be able to process negatives. Therefore,
correct.
if you say to someone, don't panic, they're going to hear panic. They're not going to get around to understanding the whole don't part, the delete it.
Right. Well, human beings delete and generalize and distort all the time. It's how we make sense of the world. And we delete things in our communications, and that's how we deal with negation. We deal with negatives by deleting things. So if I say don't think of a pink elephant, the only way you can make sense of the words, unless you're a transformational grammarian, is to make a pink elephant picture in your mind in 1/30th of a second and then delete it.
Sort of cross it out. Or,
White it out, put a red thing through it, a circle with a dash through it. And if you're dealing with someone under stress, the critical faculty is offline. So as soon as you say don't panic, which is what I teach my police students, you're causing them to access the state called panic in order to make sense of the language. And when you're under profound stress, and who isn't under stress nowadays just from being rushed all the time and there's low levels rushing, yeah. And when you're under stress, it gets worse. So you make this internal representation of panicking, but you won't get around to deleting it. So again, when people are under stress, don't use don't. And just as a general way of communicating,
I was just going to say that as a general
far
rule.
better to be positive.
Use
in your
positive
communication.
language.
Yeah.
Tell people what you do want rather than what you don't want. Ask people to do what you want them to do rather than what you don't want them to do.
And it's probably best not to frame it with "I want you to do
Yes,
this." It's
exactly.
not about you. Like if you're trying to get change in people.
We'll come to autonomy later on, probably in another.
Yes.
We'll probably have a full episode just on the techniques of instant influence from Michael Pantalon, a recent book that both of us have read.
Yes.
But generally speaking, yeah, people will do things for their own reasons, and it's better to frame in the positive rather than in the negative, and not to frame it what you want, but would you, might be a good question, would you set the table is something you might ask your children to do, or
Right.
set the table. Or instead of saying, don't sit on the couch and watch YouTube, all night long before
you're focusing
dinner.
on what
whatever.
you don't want instead of what you want.
Yeah, focus on what you
and
do
what you
want.
don't want is an infinite list.
Learn to word things in the positive, because that way you're aiming at the target state
Yes.
rather than away from the problem state.
And and be direct in your speech as much as you can. It's sort of a strunk and white conversational technique. If you want someone to pass you the salt, say, "Pass me the salt, please."
Would you possibly consider being so kind as
I
perhaps...
wonder, don't forget the wondering. I wonder if you
wonder
would be
if
so
you'd be
good
so good.
as to pass me the salt.
Yeah.
It's all about wondering about the person's essential goodness, this incredible Victorian Edwardian
it's
indirect
dissociated from
Everything
the
I love
actual
about England.
request. Pass me the salt, please.
Yeah.
Easy. Don't leave the salt sitting over there. Not so useful. Well, where do you want it? I want it though.
In my eye.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
overdoing this one now.
Yes, you are.
All right. So we've got use positive language. Don't use don't. Use what you want.
Yeah, tell people what you want.
All
now,
right.
we talked about alternatives, and double binds are a great way of presenting alternatives if you wish to be influential.
All right, so here we go. This is a technique of influence known as the double bind, and you can also use a triple bind.
Right.
Which would be
Part
offer
of my
2
3D
choices
induction.
or 3 choices or more, I suppose. But basically, you're offering alternatives where the choices from the other person all represent something that you want to have happen.
Correct.
And so, as an example, parenting situation I was just mentioning earlier, like, would you like to turn off that YouTube video before dinner now, or would you like to help me set the table? those are two possibilities, right?
Erickson would say to the kid who didn't want to go to bed, would you rather, what did he say? Would you rather take a bath before you go to bed? Or would you rather put your pajamas on in the bathroom? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'll put my pajamas on in the bathroom. Indication you're going to bed. You just put your pajamas on. Hey, double binds are interesting. They don't even have to be rational. It's something bizarre in our nature that when we are presented with only two alternatives, or three in the case of my triple bind induction, which you can do from across a room, and you'll learn in Toronto if you come and study with us. When you present only two alternatives, the brain will examine those two and tend to choose one of them. Not every single time, but if you ensure that both of the alternatives you are offering will get you exactly what you want, then you're fine. I mean, you're off to the races. Clever salespeople use this all the time. They'll say things like, maybe without even understanding the process, would you rather sign the contract now, or should we wait until after lunch? Well, I haven't got time to stay for lunch. But you're going to sign it anyway. Yeah. First of all, I haven't got time for lunch. I guess we should just sign it now. What about the third alternative? Sleep on it. Yeah. Fourth alternative, check with my spouse. There's many alternatives here.
I remember when I had young kids and we used to play at the park, take them to the park to play, and I would see. Of course, we dealt with this too, I'm sure. The kids don't want to leave the park eventually, right? You want to go home because you got to get on with your day or something, and the kid's going to cry. And you could just say something as simple as, would you like to help me make lunch when we go home now? Or do you want to walk by that house that has that cat in the window all the time first? Because your kid, let's say, always likes looking at that cat in the window and the house in the corner or whatever it is. You offer these choices. The kid, or whoever it is, it doesn't have to be used on children, although that's where I started using these a lot when my kids were young. I get a lot of practice from that way. Always just think about what people want anyway. If you know that they want something, frame what your request is by including what it is that they want. They will be much more likely to be engaged there. If their imagination is engaged in the choice, it'll distract them from the fact that you've presupposed that something is going to happen. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, maybe we should throw in, even though it's not in our notes, the idea of presupposition.
Okay.
So you want to talk about that?
Well, sure. Presupposition, any communication, when you add something, the implication of which is that something is about to occur or they're about to take a certain course of action without question, they almost agree to it a lot of the time without even verifying whether or not it's true.
Right. By answering a question that has a presupposition built in, you're accepting the presupposition. An example might be, say my wife comes home in an hour and I say to her, honey, when we go out for dinner tomorrow.
I'm just thinking the very same thing. Yeah. When we go out for dinner.
When we go out for dinner tomorrow, would you like to try that new Chinese place on the corner?
Yeah.
Or would you rather go to the smokehouse?
Yeah.
Whatever. Boom. If she answers that question, she's accepting the fact that we're going out for dinner tomorrow.
That's right. That's clever. Do you do this on your wife all the time?
Not all the time, but
almost all the time.
I do. Yeah. I do this a lot.
All the
time. Yeah.
The Varch!
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When you study hypnosis with Mike and I are you going to study online, or are you going to come to Toronto?
Yeah.
Right. That would be another example
of a double bind.
And
presupposition built into
it.
Yeah.
It implies you're going to study hypnosis with us.
Nice.
Right. So these are great ways of using double binds. Now, if you're using things, we should probably point out here, if you are using this to influence someone, please use this for the good of their life.
Right. Seriously, guys, we're all about doing things ethically. This stuff could be highly manipulative, and I've said it many times to my corporate clients. They say, well, isn't this manipulative? 1 year ago, almost to the day, I was in St. Paul and Minneapolis for a 2-day training I did down there for some Americans, and it was just amazing. And I talked about it. I said, everything I'm showing you is highly manipulative, but if you truly, honestly, in the depth of your being, believe that your product or your service is going to drastically improve that person's life, manipulate the hell out of them. I mean, it's only when we're incongruent and we're doing it for personal advantage. Yeah, well, we heard that example today from
Scott
Sandlin.
If somebody's in a bad mood and you do something to help them get into a better mood or better state.
A bezative state.
A bezative. There's a new word. You've manipulated them. But no one would challenge you and say, well, that's manipulative. You should not help people get into a good mood. Of course.
So use this stuff for good, guys. We always say ecology first, ecology first, ecology first. The ecology of your friends, your subjects, your family members, your subjects. Makes you sound like a king.
Yeah.
I meant hypnotic subjects.
If you are doing something that helps other people, if you're a consultant and you're selling some sort of consulting services and you know that your services are going to help your clients, there's nothing wrong, there's everything right with manipulating people to use your services so that they have a better life.
There must be an echo in here. I think I just said this in consummate detail about a minute ago.
I'm just giving some examples.
This is filler. This is absolute
filler. Oh, well, are you manipulating me into moving on?
I am.
Okay, here we go. All right, so manipulate people when you're helping them and manipulate the crap out of them in a good way. All right, here we go.
Hey, let's talk about adrenaline.
All right, so...
Because we say keep adrenaline out of the equation. This is more when you're in a spirited discussion.
Yeah, keep it to information.
This will stop it becoming an argument. Now, there's 3 levels of argumentation. And argumentation, we don't mean screaming at each other. We mean in the classical sense, argumentation is presenting thesis, counter-thesis, antithesis, and coming up with synthesis and endeavoring to figure out what truth is in the situation. That's argumentation. It's using logic to find truth. But the problem is human beings go through 3 different levels of this. The first one is what Chris just alluded to. Keep it down to information, or keep it down to data. Because if you're just talking data, now you're dealing rationally with other human beings. But remember, according to human givens theory, Griffin and Tyrrell, as soon as we bring in emotion, and confirmed by our friend Freddie Jacquin, when we engage the emotions, something happens. People actually become stupider when they're emotional, even if it's good emotion, like falling in love. Yes, Dad, I know he's a serial killer, but he brought me some strawberries. This is the thing.
I love the absurdity. It really makes the message
British,
clear.
I have an unfair genetic advantage in that. But the interesting thing is, if we can keep it to data, then we can discuss the topic. Once we start getting the emotions involved, start getting angry, we go to level 2.
Yeah.
We go to level 2. We got an adrenaline trickle now. At this point, we stop listening to the other person because we're mentally planning what we're going to say next. And we've all been there. I'm looking for that brilliant line I'm about to say to shut the person down, or just when someone goes on very passionately about something and tries to put me in my place. I sit and listen completely seriously, and at the end, just applaud.
Yeah. Or you're going to say, Jerry was so right about you.
So, but if you get to level 3 is adrenaline is in the discussion like frickin' gasoline now, high octane gas. It'll fuel craziness. You'll start the name calling, the screaming at each other, the volume will go up. It's
essentially the verbal equivalent of tunnel vision.
Very much so, Chris, yeah. And the key is when you start noticing your emotions are engaged, you start feeling your heart going, you're feeling the adrenaline coming in, especially for men, you need to take a breath, you need to slow down, calm down, maybe shake it off, and then come back to the discussion in a couple of minutes. And here's the thing for the women out there. Griffin and Tyrrell point out in human givens theory, which I think came out of Cambridge, England. It's brilliant. It's a unifying idea for all kinds of psychology. They said women don't like it because men, and I'm paraphrasing here, men disengage in arguments. So the woman's got in the guy's case and the man's on the woman's case, and they're back and forth, can go either way. Suddenly, the guy will just get up and leave the room. And women can't stand this. I know my own wife can't stand it. And it's, you always just walk out and you don't finish the discussion. Griffin and Tyrrell point out men are far more vulnerable to anger-driven heart attack than women are, and strokes.
You've mentioned that before.
Cerebrovascular accident with men is way higher when it's anger-driven. We get hormones in our system that have to be burned out so we can calm down. And men will intuitively break out of the conversation to go and calm down. You can go take a walk. You can do some light exercise. You can do some deep breathing. You've got to get those stress chemicals, the cortisol, the norepinephrine, out of your bloodstream, and then you can return to the conversation. So remember, guys, keep the adrenaline out. Keep it down to level 1, which is data. You'll get a lot more done. Notice I'm saying data because you do. I used to say data.
Yes. Less anger, more happiness, longer life.
Oh, that's nice.
There you go. That's nice and simple.
That's nice.
All right. So, where are we going next?
Well, it's up to you, buddy. I think we should probably take a commercial break, though.
All right, let's do it. Johnny and Virginia Wortman are a couple who are going places. After winning over $30 million in the Spunky and Beezer tax-free St. Valentine's Day Massacre Lottery, the Bortmans decided to move to their dream house. In this case, a classic Mississippi riverboat, permanently beached at Marina del Rey in California. Johnny spends a cool $1 million on renovations. But the morning they take up residence in their ultra-cool and uber-glanative paddle house, things start to go wrong. Virginia sleeps in for nearly 8 minutes, completely throwing off her morning television ritual. And if that wasn't bad enough, a scant 2 hours later, she breaks a fingernail for the second time in 12 years. Sinking into depression, Virginia struggles to get through the day. Meanwhile, in front of the beached paddleboat, Johnny begins rolling down sod, creating a small lawn around the dead cypress tree on their beach. But tragedy strikes again. While breaking up the ground around the tree with a pickaxe, Johnny accidentally strikes his left testicle, splitting it and tangling the vas deferens in the handle of the axe. He is immediately flown to Paris, France, and rushed to Charles Aznavour Hôpital Testicule, where the doctor diagnoses Johnny as un homme avec un testicule fendu. The diagnosis now certain, Johnny undergoes an emergency ball resection and is flown back to the United States. But when he arrives home, there is an unusual email from Paris waiting on his computer screen. Apparently, Johnny's Bitchard & Associates health insurance isn't worth the serviette it's printed on. Attached to the email is the bill from Charles Aznavour Hôpital Testicule, a bill for $23 million, the exact amount of money they have left from their lottery win. But amazingly, that night, a strange and unearthly light awakens Johnny. Disconnecting his IV lead and his testicle monitoring apparatus, he stumbles to the window and sees the dead cypress tree has blossomed in the darkness and is reflecting the moonlight into the beached riverboat. Everything changes when the lawn tree blooms.
I looked out of my room, he looked out of his room, and then the lawn tree bloomed,
Yeah,
and the lawn tree bloomed in the middle of June with his pet raccoon. It's when the lawn tree blooms, and the lawn tree blooms. I looked out of my room, I looked out of my room. 'Twas when the lawn tree blooms, and the lawn tree blooms. Everything changes under the moon. At that moment, not too soon, tree blooms. The Lawn Tree Blooms tonight on the Clay Shaw Network. Chris, I'm wondering if you would like to provide today's empowering question.
Are we going straight to that now?
Well,
I thought
buddy,
we've
been going 35 minutes.
I think we should give the audience one more tip.
Oh, well, let's do that,
Let's
son.
do that, and then we will end it. Okay,
Well,
so
son, give
let's
us
talk
another
about,
one. Right.
quickly, Proxemics.
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, if you're thinking about Proxemics, you really got to think of Edward
All
T.
right, so-
Hall. Edward T. Hall was the man who worked on Proxemics.
You do that too
Yeah,
well.
Edward T. I'm a Brit. It's in my DNA, buddy. I'm
All right,
hilarious.
what are Proxemics,
I've got
and
bad
how do
teeth,
you
though.
use them?
Well, they've got veneers, so they're not bad anymore. How do you use Proxemics? Recognize that you have different social ranges with people. Human interaction ranges. Ranges for human intercourse, dare we say. So recognize... March! This is a great podcast.
This is awesome.
Recognize that we have the stranger range. And the stranger range is one that we keep people... I like to keep people...
At least arm's distance.
Yeah. You don't want
At
them getting too
least
close.
arm's
I'm a
distance.
jiu-jitsu guy. You get in close, I'm going to choke you. Stay
It
away
all
from
depends
me.
on the context, right?
Well, yes.
If it looks
If it's
confrontational,
Shania
it's
Twain
more
or
than
Claudia
arm's
Schiffer, I
distance.
might let her in. Now listen, interesting, bring up Claudia Schiffer. She's not been around for like 30 years. Maybe I'd have to check that one. But the bottom line is, recognize when you're in communication with someone, there's an intimate range, which is within a foot or 18 inches. We don't like people in that. And that's why elevators are so awkward. Because in Western society, where we are forced to be in an intimate range with strangers, it feels weird. That's why people stop talking, just sort of stand
Oh, you
there
get
like,
the fight, flight, or freeze. In this case, it's the freeze response,
It's the
right?
freeze.
It's awkward. Oh,
It's
freeze.
on subways and buses, too, if you're
Yeah.
standing there with people in your personal space. So there's an intermediate ground, which is a friendly range that is not getting into intimate range. Notice your proxemics. And what I tell my clients and my students is, let the other person determine the appropriate proxemics.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're dealing with someone who's one of these in your face, likes to talk and spit on you, if there's a point to the conversation, you might want to just hold your breath and let it happen. But if there's no point, I'm going to be backing off from them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be standoffish with people. I met a guy years ago I hadn't seen in some time. I don't know what his problem was. I walked in, and he increased the range between us to like 10 feet and stood with his arms folded. His proxemics were saying, keep out.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out what it was, but I honored that.
Mm-hmm.
Honor the other person's proxemics. If you take a half step forward and they take a step back, recognize you are in the space that should be inviolate at that part.
Yeah, there
At
are
that
some
point.
there are
Dang,
some
it was
really
such a good speech.
strange people out there who don't understand
You
this at
think?
all. They
Oh,
get right in
man.
your face, and I've seen you. I love how you'll handle this sometimes. You'll put up your hands and say, "Hello, personal space violation."
Personal space violation.
Yeah.
Back.
And they get them. It's like, oh.
And if they don't get it, then I say, take a step back before one of us dies.
Yeah. And then there are people who like to not only violate personal space, but then they get touchy in weird ways, like poking you in the chest or something. When they're making a point, they think they're increasing the intensity of the point by sticking their index finger on your sternum. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Remember
like
we were
poking.
Hypnothoughts a couple of years ago?
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a guy who was a huge space invader.
Huge
Do you remember
space
how I handled
violation.
that?
Yeah, it was
blade.
quite funny. I told you about him. And then when he came to us at the bar and we
did
were all
the
just
same
chatting,
thing.
and he was doing the very, very bad space violation
With me.
You had a knife in your pocket.
carry a tactical folder, yeah.
And so you just unfolded it without him
With one
noticing.
hand.
You held it down near his crotch, and you just gestured down and said personal space violation or something like that.
He sees the double-edged blade and backs up immediately, and rightly so, you know.
It was very, very funny.
But he got the humor.
I think he got the idea. Yeah, it wasn't a.
Buddy, why don't you give us the empowering question?
All right. Before we do that, I just want to also we have to give quality stuff here. So with
our
Proxemics,
podcasts are nothing but quality.
one of the things that I remember learning from you about Proxemics is where people are aligning their body. So it's not just the physical space between
Right.
you and the other person.
That's a good point.
But also the alignment of the body, right? So what do you want to say about that?
Well, if you're too face-to-face, it can feel too confrontational. You're always best to turn like an eighth of a turn off center, so
Right.
that the two of you are now aligned towards a common point. We do that in teaching therapists and so on. Face-to-face, dead on face-to-face, feet planted still. Too close, that's going to send a message of dominance that a lot of people don't like.
And look for signs that the proxemics are changing or the alignment is changing. If somebody is increasing the distance between you and them
Right.
as your conversation is happening, maybe that's a sign the conversation needs to end, just like Mike's trying to end this podcast.
Yeah,
right?
pretty much. Yeah.
If they start angling more and more away from you, that's probably also an indication that the conversation should end.
Right.
So find a way to get out of it. I value your time, so I'll talk to you again soon. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, buddy.
Whatever
Oh, I
it
thought
is,
you were
right?
talking
Say something like that. All right, now we can go on to our
Go to empowering question, 'cause it looks like
empowering
a good
question.
one.
All right, here is today's empowering question. Ask yourself, what will happen when I start behaving like a brilliant communicator and add some new techniques to my repertoire? What will I start adding and doing immediately, and what will happen when I do it? Ooh, think about
That's a good one, Chris. Good one. I have a meta 5 for you today to follow that with. It's called the camera stuck in the throat.
Oh,
This is one you've never heard. And I was rather loath to initially bring this forward, thinking it may sound like I have mental illness or something. But yeah, I'm going to tell it anyway because it's just so damn funny.
okay. We'll be the judges of that.
Thanks, buddy. Years ago, 2 signatures, and I'm in a rubber room, right? A number of years ago when I lived with my parents, so I was a teenager, my father had his ham shack for his ham radio just around the corner. It was a closet that he'd hollowed out. He had the leads going out, the antenna outside, and he'd do his 30-meter band and all this stuff on it. He also had some photographic chemicals he kept in there. He used it as a makeshift darkroom for a while. We were living on Victoria Park. I went through a time in my life where in my sleep, I'd choke and think I had something caught in my throat. I would then go into a sleepwalking phase and not know I was asleep and go in and tell my parents I had something stuck in my throat. Now, the very first time this happened, my father heard me choking in my room. He was up working his ham shack. So he opened the door, came in. I was sitting up in bed, pointing in my mouth and doing the sign of a camera with a hand. So we went,
like your shutter release.
Like this, like a shutter release, yeah, and keep pointing in my mouth going, he's going, what? What's the matter? What's the matter? I'm pointing in my mouth, and he's looking in my mouth like this. Now, I'd been eating chlorets, which are chlorophyll. My tongue was green. My dad's immediate thought was, my son has been sleepwalking. He's trying to tell me he went into my ham shack and drank some photographic chemicals. That's what he actually thought.
Yeah, because the chlorets was like a green gum.
What it was going through my mind was I had a Polaroid camera at that time with a developer spreader, the metal part built in, and I had this big wire developer spreader stuck in my throat. And I was trying to tell him I've got a camera stuck in my throat. And then I suddenly woke up and went, I'm okay now. And then I explained to him. And he laughed and he almost had a heart attack. He did later, but not from that. And this was a recurrent theme. And one night, we'd moved now to a different place. Obviously, it was under stress when this would happen. My parents and I were living in Ajax, and I went and knocked on their bedroom door, walked in the night, and woke my mom up. I said, Mom, don't panic. First thing I said. My mom was a warrior, survived the Battle of Britain, the Manchester Blitz, right? So I said, don't panic. She said, my God, what's wrong? What's wrong? I said, I know you'll think I'm dreaming, but I have a deck of cards caught in my throat. My mom goes, oh, thank God. Like that. So my dad gets up with me. He'd learned to humor me. We go into the bathroom. I'm fast asleep, looking in the mirror, and I could see they were all in a tube wrapped around each other, and the King of Hearts was at the top, in the back of my mouth. And I'm in the mirror going, and my dad, yeah, King of Hearts, yeah. He'd just humor me, and then I go, I'd wake up. I'd say, good night, Dad. And he'd go, good night, son. And go back to bed. And over the years, I've had a stick of incense caught in my throat, multiple decks of cards, and even a piece of metal from the vehicle assembly building at NASA, Kennedy Space Center. And when I was under a lot of stress, I'd wake up and there'd be something in my throat. And if I didn't cough it up, I would die. I'd be afraid of swallowing it. There's always a toxic element. I am since then a lot better.
My only question for you is what's next?
Shut up.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to episode 117
I need a coffee.
of the Brain Software Podcast. Yeah,
come
we'll
to
get
Toronto,
a coffee right after this. Either come to Toronto or study with us online. Either way, you will find everything you need about hypnosis at MikeMandelHypnosis.com. If you want to find out the live events, go to /events. And we will talk to you again in the next episode. God willing, we'll be back
for 118. Thanks again, and
good night! I love this song.
Let's do it. Out where the river broke, the bloodwood and the desert oak, hidden wrecks and fallen diesels, steaming 45 degrees. The time has come to say fair's fair, to pay the rent, to pay our share. Again. The time has come. A fact's a facta. It belongs to them. Let's give it back. Down, 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 down. Oh, hey. It's when our earth is turning. How do we sleep while our beds are burning?
Ladies and gentlemen, how are we going to sleep? Thank you very much.
How can we dance when our earth is turning? Not a freestyle chanting.
How do we sleep while our beds are burning?
My lord!
All right.